Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Sustainable Supply Chain Podcast. My name is Tom Raftery, and with me on the podcast today, I have my special guest, Andrei. Andrei, welcome to the podcast. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. It's great to be here. Thanks a lot for having me, Tom. So I'm Andrei Danescu, one of the founders of Dexory, and I am the CEO. My background is in this technology space, robotics, autonomous systems. So that's how Dexory came to be, from a passion of using autonomous robots to collect real-time data and using this data, using this information to really drive business and industry transformation for the logistics industry.
Okay. And tell me a little bit more about that. How did you get into robotics and real time data?
So that's an interesting question. I'll try to be brief because it kind of goes back to it pretty much goes back to my childhood. I've always been very passionate about technology. I've always been fascinated about robots. I was obviously a geek growing up, very much into tech.
Cool.
And throughout my life, throughout my career, I've always been excited about creating new products, creating new technology. So as I grew up and I started going through my studies, I focused and specialized in robotic systems, electronics control systems. Then as I went through my career before Dexory, I did motorsport. So in motorsport, I did data engineering, I did control systems. I used to work in Formula One. And that really triggered my imagination of what you could do if you have this ability of collecting real-time data from any space, and you have the ability to transform this into insights. So really kind of drive business value. And what created Dexory was this intersection of autonomous robotics as well as the ability to use information and feed it forward, turn it into insights, and drive value for businesses. So that's the combination that really got me into robotics, and then that's the combination that got robotics into Dexory and into the product that we have today.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about the product that we have today. So far, I've figured out that it's a robot that does something with real time data. Now, I obviously know a lot more because I went through the website, we had the prep call, et cetera, et cetera. But for anyone else listening, that's where they are right now.
So that's in a nutshell what we have. We have some robots and we have some real time information, and then where things get really interesting is when we start looking at the product that we offer as a company. So this product is very much around digital twins. Now, it's a digital twin platform for logistics. Specialty is warehousing and warehousing operations. What this means is the way we describe it as a global visibility platform for the logistics industry. So it gives any warehouse operators or multi-warehouse operators the ability to really control every element of that operation, to really have the visibility on how can they run the business more efficiently, how can they maximize the operational efficiency, the sustainability, the quality of every single location. What's really unique about it is it's powered by the world's tallest autonomous robots. So our technology consists of this very tall robots that collect the data, collect the information from warehouses.
Mm-hmm.
They then transform it into insights and push that informational insights into Dexory View. So Dexory View is the product that we're talking about here. This is the digital twin platform, the global visibility platform, and this is the single source of truth for warehouses where they can go in, access any area of the warehouse, any product, search for anything from any location in the world.
Okay. So just to break it down, you've got robots that are tall. And the reason the tallness is important is because in warehouses themselves, the pallets can be quite tall as well. So your tall robots can see up to the top of those pallets, can see what's there, and they're using computer vision to make a map of the warehouse, which goes into the digital twin, and therefore people can see what's in any part of any warehouse at any time. Is that more or less it?
I think you've described it very well. So looking at it in more detail, basically, we were very excited about the opportunity of helping the industry become more efficient, helping the industry become more sustainable. And a lot of this actually came from the challenges that we faced during the pandemic. And I don't know if you remember, but there
I
were
remember.
massive issues with electronic parts, with
Yeah.
pretty much everything, and you couldn't really predict any of this because you had some components today and then tomorrow other components were missing or other things were short or in short supply. So that's kind of how we had the idea. We had the idea of what's the way of bringing or closing that visibility gap. This is what we call it. We call it a visibility gap. So when we looked at what a warehouse consists of, it has these very tall racking systems.
Hmm.
And exactly like you said, we have these very tall robots, which are the same height as the racking system, which allows us to collect an incredible amount of information. So we can scan over 10,000 pallets in an hour, which means that on a daily basis, we can scan the entire warehouse, we can scan the entire space, and really bring that power of real-time data insights to customers.
Okay. I'm assuming that the alternative to this is someone going along with a clipboard and scanning the shelves and making notes, or maybe an iPad scanning the shelf and making notes. Or I know more recently I've talked to companies that are doing things like they're running drones inside warehouses, up and down shelving systems. Is is that kind of it in terms of state of the art right now, or is there something else I'm missing?
I think that's a good description. That's pretty much it. I mean, realistically, what you described first, I think that's pretty much the status quo in the way people are doing this. I mean, you have teams that are going around warehouses with clipboards, and that is a very slow and very inefficient process. Some people have tried drones. There's various issues with the speed of scanning and the ability to actually return the same amount of data, the same amount of information. And that's one of the reasons why we decided to go with a ground-based robot that allows us to really scan everything very quickly. Because we spoke to a lot of players in the industry
Hmm.
and spoke to a lot of people in the market which have a lot of experience in running warehouses. And we said, what would you need in order to get that 100% efficiency, to access that next level of sustainable, efficient operations? And a lot of the time, the answer is really we we don't have an ability to collect information on a continuous basis. We don't have an ability to become a data-driven industry. So therefore, that's the opportunity that we saw. We said, okay, how can we create something that gives large industry players and small industry players, pretty much anyone that operates these locations, these environments, how can we create something that gives them the unique advantage that real-time data gives you in other industries and in other spaces in the world? So when you look at people running around and collecting this information with clipboards, like you're saying,
Mm.
the problem there is that it's very slow, and also it's very hard to get the data richness that we can provide. So when you look at the digital twin, where you have a complete 3D reconstruction of the environment, you have computer vision, like you mentioned, which allows you to extract a lot of information from pictures. You have pictures in every location, which gives you a continuous view of the space. So if you want to go back in time, a month ago or 2 months ago, you have an exact snapshot of how your location, how your warehouse was operating. And
Okay.
that's very, very hard to do with other technologies because on one hand, you need a lot of people, you need a lot or a large team doing this. But on the other hand, you can't afford to keep closing operations to be able to scan using other type of technologies that are there may be out there.
Hmm. The other one, of course, I forgot to mention was the kind of smart shelving units, but those are horrifically expensive, I guess.
That's a very good point because I think when you look at a 100,000 pallet warehouse, even a 10,000 pallet warehouse, 15,000 pallet warehouse, there's challenges fitting these cameras,
Mm.
and then there's challenges consuming really all the information, all the data, because it doesn't just magically go from one camera to the server or to the location where you need to use it. So I think that's not necessarily horrifically expensive. It is extremely expensive when you work out the practicalities of deploying such a system,
Hmm.
but it's also very impractical because if anything breaks, if you have a couple of cameras that get knocked by a pallet or by a forklift or whatever might happen, then your data becomes incomplete and you start losing that richness and that continuous value that it can bring.
Okay. And Your autonomous robots, how often would they scan the shelves? Is it once a day, 5 times a day, 100 times a day? Is it entirely up to the warehouse owner? Where does it lie there?
So I would say we scan at least once a day. The current offering and the current state of technology allows us to scan 1 million square feet or over 100,000 pallets on a daily basis. So if you have warehouses that are smaller than that, it means you can scan them multiple times a day. This is
Mhm.
done with one single robot in one single location.
Okay.
And of course, if you have warehouses that are bigger, you can then use or deploy multiple robots to scan even faster and even more often. Usually, what we find is that working very closely with additional warehouse systems allows us to know where there's more activity in this environments, and then we can actually prioritize those areas for more often scanning if it's needed.
Okay. And seeing as you bring it up, what is the connectivity between Dextry View and other warehouse management systems? Like, do they talk to each other very straightforward? Is it through an API, or do you need to do some kind of integration, or where are you there?
So it's relatively straightforward, I would say. We have a very simple and very easy way of integrating with other systems. You can do data exchange in various ways. You can work on an API basis. So if there are existing APIs that we want to be either integrating with, pulling data from, pushing data into, or if we want to go into a deeper integration, we also have the opportunity to do that. So Dexory View is a system that we've designed as a complete product. So obviously it offers multiple ways of ingesting data, exporting data, but also integrating with other systems.
And it's cloud delivered, or is it on prem?
We have options for both. Primarily it's cloud delivered, as it's a lot simpler to maintain, and
Mm.
it avoids any kind of complication for the customer. That's probably one of the key points for us. We want to make this technology. If you provide a technology that is autonomous, it needs to be really autonomous. The
Hmm.
customer doesn't have to do anything about it. So the easier it is to deploy and the faster it is to deploy, the better it is for the customers. And that's what we're providing.
Okay. And when you say Dex reviews the product, so the robots are, and you said one typically per warehouse. Do customers buy the robots? Do they lease the robots? Do they get the robots free with a subscription to Dex Review? What's the business model there?
So the robots are a part of the product that we offer. And the reason why I say Dexter Review is the product, because you cannot separate the two. You have a holistic package that allows you to get this real-time visibility on operations. So there's a subscription model that is very similar to the vast majority of software subscription models.
Sure.
And this basically consists of a bundle that includes the autonomous scanning robots in order to supply obviously the real-time data on a daily basis.
Okay. Cool. Cool. And do you have any success stories, any customer success stories you can talk
Yeah,
to?
I mean, we have a bunch of case studies, of course, on our website and online that we can talk about. But also there's a fair number of large corporate customers that we're working with. We also have some smaller customers that have seen a very rapid ROI, a very, very quick return on the investment on the technology. And also, more importantly, they have seen a very big impact at the business level. And that's one of the most exciting things for us is bringing a product into the market and seeing the value it brings to our customers.
Okay. And in terms of sustainability, do you have any metrics you can speak to? X customer deployed Dex Review, and as a result, their warehouses are now Y% more efficient, or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't look at necessarily generalizing, but what we're seeing with a fairly large sample of our customer base is that in the ideal world, you want to operate at 100% efficiency, right?
Hmm.
There's never going to be 100%. You might be at 99.999 or 999.597. But what we're seeing is that customers usually start in the region of 90, 85, 92, 93, even some of the better ones, 92, 93%, when you're looking at a massive warehouse with tens of thousands of pallet locations and a very large footprint, all 5% inefficiency does really end up costing a fair amount of money.
Mhm.
So what we've seen is that deploying our technology and more importantly also working to fix these issues, because of course the technology gives you the actionable insights, but it does rely on people taking the actions to fix it. So it's a huge enhancement for the existing workforce. We've managed to take warehouses that are over 80,000 pallet locations to less than 10, 15 errors on a daily basis. So we've pretty much taken them to the 100% efficiency, especially if you round it. But we've literally eliminated from 1,000 errors down to 10, 15, 20 errors. So a huge improvement in the way they can run the operations. And then obviously what that translates into is better use of resources, because you don't have to spend so much on, for example, the lighting in the warehouse for people to find various things or lost goods. Better use of the existing infrastructure, forklifts that need to be charged and so on. And obviously a happier workforce, which at the end of the day does go towards the sustainability concept, because we are not going to have a very robust and agile supply chain if we don't have people that are very excited to work in that space as well.
So the workers don't enjoy running around the warehouse looking for lost parts.
I mean, I can't remember last time I enjoyed looking, trying to find something I've lost. It's not exactly a pastime activity, right? So no, they don't really like that. And also the other bit that comes on top of it is when you have to ensure that a certain cargo or certain goods make the next mode of transport, the pressure becomes really, really high. And if you think about it, especially when you look at the wider impact on sustainability, if you're operating in a cargo warehouse and the cargo that's supposed to go on a certain plane misses that plane, then you have to go back to the queue. You end up having this snowball effect that impacts the entire operations across multiple different flights. If you send the wrong thing to the wrong customer and then you have to rebook it, you have to put it back on another plane, bring it back to source. So there's a lot of, let's call them hidden efficiencies, because they actually stem out of the warehouse operations,
Mm-hmm.
but they have a much wider ripple effect across the entire supply chain.
Okay. And I mean, it seems on the face of it to be a very simple solution. You've got a robot going along the warehouse, quite tall, with covered cameras, taking pictures the whole time, sending all that data into your Dexory View product so that everyone knows where everything is in the warehouse at all times. What's next? Because okay, that's that issue solved. Are you looking at other problems? Are you looking at ways to improve the current solution? Or what's next on your playbook?
So we're continuously looking at becoming better, right? We're always looking at being able to scan faster, being able to do more with the existing technology, more in the same space. I think it goes back to the question that you asked me previously, is how many times a day can you scan? Well, at the moment, if we can scan 100,000 pallets in a day, if we scan twice as much, then obviously not necessarily that we would need to, but we can scan a lot faster, which means we can bring a much better detailed picture of what's going on with the operation. We're, of course, always looking to go bigger and higher. So we are continuously exploring new ways of accessing new heights for our technology, to put it in a more poetic way.
Pun intended.
And yes, exactly. And I think one of the big areas of development for us is being able to bring more and newer technologies into the industry. So we are doing a lot of work with artificial intelligence to be able to drive further optimizations on how the operations are being run, to be able to extract pretty much the last 0.01% of value from the existing warehousing systems, existing operations. Because when you look at the warehouse, again, we go a little bit more in the sustainable sustainable direction. If you have to heat up the space, you have to use electricity to light up the space and so on. And you have to do these operations regardless. You could run the whole warehouse at 1% efficiency, 10%, 50%, or 100% efficiency. You end up having to use these resources. And then if you have an inefficient utilization of that environment, of that space, then obviously it's not very good for anyone and nobody wants that. So using artificial intelligence to drive further optimizations, to store your goods better, to be able to put more pallets, to put more goods through the same space, through the same warehouse, that's where we see a huge opportunity. And we also see a huge opportunity for enhancing further the existing workforce, being able to work hand in hand with people to make their jobs easier, to make their day to day a lot more pleasant.
Okay. Okay, cool. You are going to be, or your robots are going to be scanning lots and lots and lots of pallets in lots and lots and lots of warehouses. That's a huge amount of data you'll be scanning and storing. Are you going to be looking across that data for any trends that you can then issue reports on, or say to people, other warehouses in your industry do this kind of thing? Any look for best practices that you can share with your customers, any of those kind of things?
So that's definitely an interesting idea. I think we should absolutely explore that further. But this is exactly what I was telling you about the artificial intelligence systems we have at the moment, is being able to analyze the trends inside the warehouse and being able to proactively come up with solutions and ways of making that operation more efficient. So we haven't really expanded at the cross industry level or cross market level. I think for us, the big focus is to make sure that we can give everyone the ability to run their operation at 100% efficiency. What's really interesting is, whilst we have this incredible ability to collect the information, it's also very, very important how do you process the information into insights. Because, just to give you an example, I think we can collect anything between 300-400 gigs an hour every hour.
Hmm.
So a lot of our technology revolves around processing that data in real time and not storing things that are not useful for anyone really.
Okay.
Because going back to the connectivity question you asked me, if you're trying to push 400 gigs an hour, 500 gigs an hour every hour, then you start having this massive gap between the point of collecting the information and the point of actually returning the insights. So that our technology is capable of processing all that in real time. Pretty much the robots are scanning in the warehouse and you see the results, you see the information, and you can act on it straight away. So that gives us the ability to analyze the trends in a lot more detail at a much, much higher speed with a much better resolution than other things would enable us to do.
Okay. And in terms of just working with the people who are working in the warehouse at the same time as well, it's an autonomous robot. Does it scan around looking for people to make sure it's not going to bump into anyone? Does it have warning sounds? How does it make sure that the people in its environment are safe?
So it's designed as a collaborative robot. It's designed as a collaborative technology. That's a very important point because, especially as you're scanning these big spaces, you need to be able to operate with zero impact on the day-to-day operations, with zero impact on the existing process, the existing flow.
Mm.
We have a large number of safety systems built into the product. So it will be able to avoid obstacles. It would be able to navigate dynamic environments. It has the standard warehouse warning lights, the blue lights projected on the floor, the buzzers, so the audio signals and audio warnings. Very, very important point, because these are environments that are real. This is
Mm.
not about creating a technology in the lab. This is about creating a technology that is robust and is ready to be deployed anywhere in the world. So that's always been front of mind for us. And from the beginning, that's exactly what we looked at doing, was make a technology that can operate in any environment with any number of people around it, forklifts, pallet trucks, anything you might imagine in a warehouse, of course.
Okay, fair enough. Cool. We're coming towards the end of the podcast now, Andre. Is there any question I did not ask that you wish I did, or any aspect of this we haven't touched on that you think it's important for people to think about?
I think we obviously covered quite a lot. One thing I would say is probably looking a little bit closer at the speed of information and the speed of data gathering, because I think that's one of the fundamental parts of why this technology is so impactful. If you look at okay, fine, people might do a stock take once a year or once a quarter, and then you can do it every week or every other week. That's fine. Okay, you've created some efficiencies there, but I think the value that you really, that exponential value that you bring to the industry is really being able to collect this data on at least a daily basis, sometimes multiple times a day. That's really when you start seeing the compounding benefits. That's really when you start seeing that value that you can derive from being able to optimize your operation to that last finest level of detail. So I think that's an interesting one. We haven't sort of like explored so much around why we are actually collecting over 10,000 pallets an hour. But I have already mentioned why, because I think the speed at which you can collect the information and the frequency at which you collect the information is one of the most important points. It's also what's giving you the ability to have a continuous view of the operation. So you have a daily snapshot. You want to go back in time at any point, you see exactly what the state of the operation was. So when you look at optimizing for the future, if there was something that was seasonal and you only ran it for, I don't know, let's call it the winter season, and you can go back in that period and see exactly how did my warehouse look like and where can I drive efficiencies for the next winter season in the next year. I think that's one of the key points that I am always keen to highlight as well.
Okay. One thing I forgot to ask earlier, so I'll ask it now. When your robot is scanning the shelves in the warehouse, can it actually identify what's on the shelves? Can you train it to say this is this particular product or this particular SKU or whatever?
Yes, the short answer to that one is yes. So using the computer vision techniques, we can detect obviously barcodes, QR codes, and other types of labels and decode them and understand them. But you can also do analysis on the type of goods you have on this pallet. So the robots scan very, very closely to the shelf. They're about 40 centimeters to half a meter away from the shelf. So there's no, when the robots are scanning, there's nothing that's going to get in the way or in between the robots and the actual shelves. So the pictures that you're taking are the actual goods that are on pallets stored inside the warehouse. From this information, you can extract quite a lot of value. You can understand how much a product is available for picking at any point in time. What are some of the unique identifiers, the labels? You can look at the pictures and say, okay, this is my box of specific type of clothing or a specific brand that I have in the warehouse. So it has a lot of flexibility built into it. Because warehouses are live environments and you might not always have a barcode, you might not always have a unique identifier. So you use this rich data sets to extract as much value from it as you can.
And I assume as well it's a learning system so that if you tell it once this particular shape is this particular product, it never has to be told again or it shouldn't have to be told again.
It's design, and we're continuously working on that to get better and improve over time, to have a deeper and deeper understanding of how things are usually displayed in a warehouse, what things are in a warehouse, and how to best recognize them in the future.
Okay, super. Great. Andrea, that's been really interesting. If people would like to know more about yourself or any of the things we discussed on the podcast today, where would you have me direct them?
I think the easiest way would be to go to our website, dexory.com. There's a lot of information there, but also reach out to us on LinkedIn, reach out to myself on LinkedIn. I'd be always happy to have a chat and dive into more detail.
And where does the name Dexory come from?
That's a very interesting question. So we wanted to have a coin term that brings together digital twin technology, extrasensorial capabilities, which is how we look at our robots, our autonomous robots that are capable of scanning, and the kind of how do we make this into something that also sounds high tech. So that's how we looked at extrasensorial. we wanted to have a couple of X's, a couple of Y's in there. So we did quite a big brainstorming around it, and we looked at Dexory, and then we wanted to bring the digital twin side of things. So Dexory is what we landed on.
Fantastic. Great. Andrew, that's been really interesting. Thanks a million for coming on the podcast today.
An absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me.